DC Comics fans have been waiting to see their favorite characters on the big screen in a shared connected universe that actually makes sense. We've been waiting for the announcements from James Gunn and Peter Safran regarding the big DCU lineup. We know they've got a 10-year plan. They've rolled out the initial 10 projects that they're going to announce, 5 movies and 5 television shows. And I'm going to tell you this up front. I'm quite skeptical on a lot of these. I think they are going about a lot of things very wrong. Notably, when you look at the information that's at hand, there's no Wonder Woman, there's no Flash, there's no Nightwing, there's no Aquaman, there's no Green Arrow. They're actually missing a lot of the important DC Comics heroes that a lot of us have been waiting to see, like a Green Arrow. We want to see him on the big screen, but you're going to get to see Supergirl first. Some baffling decisions in my mind, and I've got some opinions on the characters and projects, which is going to be called, I guess phase 1 is called Gods and Monsters. Well, that makes sense. A lot of people have compared the DC heroes to gods among us, and obviously the villains be the monsters and stuff like that. And I guess this is all setting up something that is going to be much bigger in scope and long-term planning and all that good stuff. The first project announced is Superman. Set to open July 11, 2025, Superman Legacy will mark the start of the DCU, as Safran put it, but it will not be an origin story for the proverbial Man of Steel. This is what Peter Safran had to say. It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He is kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned. Gunn is writing the project, and Safran said he hopes Gunn can be persuaded perhaps to direct it as well. Well, I'm glad they said truth, justice, and the American way, so at least they got something about the character right. I thought it was illegal for anybody associated with DC to say those words out loud in association with Superman. So truth, justice, and the American way, hopefully, they embrace that kind of stuff. But I do think they are going about this all wrong. Superman does not have an inherent conflict, the character that we actually know, between his Kryptonian heritage and his human upbringing, his American upbringing. That has actually nothing to do with the character. In fact, over the years, Superman has met a lot of Kryptonians, and whenever he does, he never ever introduces himself as Kal-El. He introduces himself as Clark Kent because he's a fully formed human being at this point, and his humanity is what grounds the character and makes him so likable and so important to the future of the DCU itself. Without a fully functioning, well-developed Superman, there is no DCU. I do not know why they're going down this path. Maybe they want to do something different with the character. We've already seen that with Zack Snyder, Superman, Man of Steel, whatever you want to call it, and it didn't exactly go well. So I'm not exactly optimistic about that path for Superman himself. As far as Gunn directing it, I hope that doesn't happen. I've seen 4 James Gunn films that are superhero movies that he's directed. Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Super, as well as The Suicide Squad. And there's not a moment in any of those 4 movies that makes me think James Gunn is the right director for a Superman movie. There's also not a moment in any of those movies that makes me think James Gunn is the right man to write a Superman movie at that fact. So I say the less involvement from James Gunn in Superman, the better, but it sounds like he'll be taking it over, and I've never seen anything that makes me think that he will actually get the character right. Maybe James Gunn has it in him to deliver a good Superman movie, but I doubt it. Next up is The Authority. Superman Legacy will lead directly into The Authority, an ensemble movie about superhumans who have a less than idealistic approach to saving the world. Gunn spoke at length about The Authority, a project he said he's really excited to bring to life. The characters come from Wildstorm, which was launched in 1992 under current DC Comics chief Jim Lee and ultimately made an imprint of DC. The Wildstorm characters were later folded into the main DC Comics universe. When the company rebooted its continuity with the new 52 initiative in 2011, Gunn said he and Safran intend to do the same thing with Wildstorm characters in the DCU. Wildstorm, The Authority, has not worked from the day they decided to fold it into DC Comics themselves. They need to be their own thing. It's a completely different world. When you have a universe with Superman, you actually can't have a universe with the Authority because Superman would have to take the Authority out. They actually can't be good guys in the same universe. I understand there's a juxtaposition between Batman and Superman, and that's interesting, but the Authority are on a whole nother level when it comes to handling their business. Let's just put it that way. Earmarking the Authority to be something important in the future of the DCU is another mistake. If they wanted to do something with the Authority, they should have done something more like Watchmen. Perhaps plan out a trilogy or something, and you could have done the Authority as something else, or perhaps a TV show. It seems to have worked out for the boys. As a part of the DCU, within the continuity of it, the characters never work. It just does not work within the DC Comics universe. The next project is The Brave and the Bold. Along with introducing the DCU's version of Batman, who will exist separately from the version played by Robert Pattinson in the Batman movies, The Brave and the Bold will introduce the Bat family, Gunn said. First among them is Robin, who is returning fully to live-action movies for the first time since 1997's ill-fated feature Batman and Robin. This version of Robin is Damian Wayne. Gunn described him as our favorite Robin, a little son of a bitch, an assassin, and a murderer. There's absolutely no way in hell they're going to release a movie called The Brave and the Bold starring Batman. Other than comic book readers, no one even knows that's associated with Batman. That's absolutely crazy. So we can nix that idea. They can go with it as a working title. It will have Batman in the feature title, I guarantee you, when it comes out. As far as the decision to make Robin Damian Wayne, maybe, I guess, it's not really the Robin most people are familiar with. I happen to like Damian Wayne, but to open up with Batman's Robin being Damian Wayne does call into question, were the other Robins ever there? Do we still have a Dick Grayson? Do we still have a Jason Todd, any of those other characters? If you weren't going to use Dick Grayson, who's certainly the best known Robin out there, I would have gone with Jason Todd, because it would end up setting up that really cool Under the Red Hood movie that you could actually do that I think would make a lot of money. But I don't know if they got that one right, but it certainly will be interesting. I think the casting of Batman obviously is going to be really key, but it will cause some confusion within the DCU now that you've already got multiple Batmans again. Like, that's already been a problem where you have so many different versions of Batman running around in different universes. But I guess we're just going to keep that one going. We shall see. That one sounds somewhat promising. Next up, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Based on Tom King's comic run of the same title from 2021 and 2022, Woman of Tomorrow features Superman's cousin Kara Zor-El, who, as Gunn explained, is a very different type of Supergirl. This is what James Gunn said. We see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he's an infant, versus Supergirl, who was raised on a rock chip off Krypton and watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life. As far as Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow being a movie, they've already made the movie twice. It's the movie that Tom King basically rips the story off of from. If you haven't seen True Grit, featuring probably my favorite actor of all time, John Wayne, or the remake from the Coen brothers, True Grit, like, that's the story. He ripped it off completely from True Grit. James Gunn should know this. He's a filmmaker. He has to have seen True Grit and the reboot. If you've never seen True Grit, I do recommend them. If you could only watch one, I do love John Wayne, but the reboot from the Coen brothers is actually better somehow. So as far as just like a different kind of Supergirl, good luck with that. Making that character relevant is really hard work. I think the only people that got it right outside of comic books are probably the creators of the Supergirl movie in the 80s that did not take the character seriously at all, because none of the viewers will either. I don't know why they're prioritizing that character over Wonder Woman. Not a very smart move, in my opinion. But hey, have fun ripping off Tom King's ripoff of other movies that have already been made. What a stupid idea. The final movie project is Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing will investigate the dark origins of Swamp Thing, Safran said, through the prism of horror. By way of explaining further, Gunn referenced the initial reactions to Guardians of the Galaxy joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe and initial questions about how Rocket Raccoon would work standing next to Thor. That mashup quality wound up being one of the highlights of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, Gunn argued. I don't know that I would actually compare Rocket Raccoon and Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is a very well fleshed out character with a lot of really, really, really interesting lore. I'll definitely see this. Swamp Thing is one of my favorite characters in DC Comics. In fact, I like the Swamp Thing movie from the 70s or 80s. I'll definitely check this out. It's going to be interesting to see what path they go. I hope they just go back to the Alan Moore stuff, like the questions of humanity, the exploration of humanity through Alex Holland. Once he learns that he's not a human anymore, he's actually a plant mimicking human. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do there, and we'll see how that one goes. The next projects are all television projects. Let's talk about the first one, Creature Commandos. This animated series for HBO Max is the very first project greenlit by Safran and Gunn, who has written every episode. The show is already in production. The Creature Commando characters were launched in 1980. The premise features Frankenstein's monster teaming up with a werewolf, a vampire, and a gorgon to fight Nazis in World War II. It doesn't appear that Gunn's version takes the quite same approach. Weasel, one of the characters from Gunn's 2021 film The Suicide Squad, is one of the commandos, along with Rick Flag's father, Rick Flag Sr. That's what animation is for, to take chances and do interesting stuff with. I don't know that Creature Commandos would have been the first thing I greenlit. I don't know that I would have prioritized that, but maybe it has a soft spot in James Gunn's heart and he really wanted to do the project. Maybe it's a dream project for him to work on or something. Sounds like he's writing the scripts and all that. We shall see. I don't see anything wrong with that as long as it's not important to the DCU itself. And I don't think it will be. I think it's going to be kind of some fun little cartoon adventure thing on HBO Max. So there you go. That should be perfectly fine. Next up is Waller. With Gunn focused on Superman Legacy for the foreseeable future, Season 2 of Peacemaker has already been put on hold. Instead, Team Peacemaker will appear alongside Amanda Waller as a continuation of that show. Gunn said, which ended with Waller's daughter outing Task Force X, also known as the Suicide Squad, and Waller's role running it to the world. Along with Crystal Henry, who was part of the DCU writers' room, Waller will be executive produced by Jeremy Carver, who created the beloved DC series Doom Patrol, which was recently canceled by HBO Max. I'm a big fan of Doom Patrol. That's a really good adaptation of the Doom Patrol themselves. I would say that James Gunn's Peacemaker, while very entertaining, is not a very good adaptation of the Peacemaker character himself. So it feels like there's some things at odds with each other there. I personally like Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. I guess that's one of the characters that they're going to bring over from the DCEU. One of the things that they thought worked. Not surprising since James Gunn worked with the actress when he was making the Suicide Squad. I just hope she's not like a super big focal point of the DCU. She's an interesting character and can be a foil at times to certain heroes, but she's not a foil for Superman or anything like that. I think having her mess around with Peacemaker and the other heroes there makes perfect sense. And it's too bad we aren't going to get a second season of Peacemaker because I thought it was really good and funny, if not accurate to the character, because it definitely wasn't. But it does feel like the creative visions of Gunn, who created Peacemaker, and Jeremy Carver, who did Doom Patrol, aren't really going to mix well. Although Doom Patrol is slightly funny, but it's a way different kind of humor. The next project is Lanterns. Of all the TV series, Safran and Gunn seem most excited for Lanterns, which Safran described as a huge HBO quality event that is very much in the vein of True Detective. The show will focus on two of the best-known members of the Green Lantern Corps, Hal Jordan, the test pilot first played on screen by Ryan Reynolds in 2011's Green Lantern, and John Stewart, an ex-Marine and one of DC's first black superheroes, who investigated a mystery that Safran said plays a really big role leading us into the main story that we're telling across our films and television. This project is separate from a Green Lantern series that was being developed by Greg Berlanti for HBO Max, which is no longer moving forward. Of all the things that are being announced here, this and Swamp Thing are the things that I'm most interested in. I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. I'm a huge Hal Jordan fan. John Stewart, I think, works very good on a team scenario. Teaming up with Hal Jordan to do a series of investigations to unlock the big mystery that's unfolding within the DCU sounds like a lot of fun. I'm excited about that. I've been waiting to see a good live-action Green Lantern for a long time. Obviously, Ryan Reynolds missed the boat just a little bit. The next project, Paradise Lost. This Game of Thrones story, Safran said, is set on the island of Themyscira before the birth of Diana, Wonder Woman. It's really about political intrigue behind the Society of All Women, Safran said. Added Gunn, how did that come about? What's the origin of an island of all women? What are the beautiful truths and the ugly truths behind all that? And what's the scheming like between the different power players in that society? Paradise Lost, I know that's the name of a story arc back in the day with Phil Menes or whatever, but without Wonder Woman there, like, who gives a flying fuck? Like, I just could not care less. Themyscira is not that interesting, and most of the characters around Themyscira, including Diana's mom, Hippolyta, and Nubia, and all the other characters, like, who cares? Without Wonder Woman, they're all pretty much worthless, and I imagine that's what this show will be. Finally, there's Booster Gold, which allows the DCU to fully stretch into outright comedy. While he may not be familiar to casual fans of DC, the character, also known as Mike Carter, is a fan favorite among devoted readers. Safran called Booster a loser from the future who uses basic future technology to come back to today and pretend to be a superhero. In the 25th century, Mike is a disgraced former football star who uses a time machine on display in the Metropolis Space Museum. Man, it sucks that John Cena can't play the character. I think he would be perfect as Booster Gold, wouldn't he? Booster Gold's fine. That will be outright comedy. I hope James Gunn is writing that. That's the one project that feels like a James Gunn project, his Booster Gold. And it's also pretty obscure, so I imagine he's not going to have much of anything to do with it, which is probably very disappointing. Not a whole lot to get really excited there for me. I'm very skeptical about a number of these projects. There are a lot of heroes that have been left out. I think they got the Robin wrong. I think their idea behind what makes Superman tick is wrong. Supergirl, like the ripoff of True Grit, yeah, it's going to be a good story, but it's not really Supergirl. And that character is completely irrelevant anyway. Who cares about Themyscira and anything to do with Wonder Woman without Wonder Woman? Like, get out of here with that crap. Lantern sounds cool. I'm definitely interested in Swamp Thing, but for the most part, it's not a good start. But the good thing is, it's not Zack Snyder's DCEU. And that, in and of itself, should be an improvement. I actually talked about how Zack Snyder destroyed the DCEU from the very beginning, and why they're in this predicament today, having to reboot it just a few years after it launched. If you haven't seen this video, definitely check it out. There's also a link in the video description.